Mr. Kip Sorensen, good to see you, brother. I hope all's going well.
Yeah, things are awesome. And you just had an awesome trip coming back from Texas last week.
Yeah, I was down there. I met with Cam Haines. So that podcast came out yesterday as of the release of this podcast.
Yeah.
And then I also sat down with Tim Kennedy. I totally messed up. I'm a human too. People don't think that sometimes. They just think I'm almost godlike. And then I mess up, and I know it's really shocking to people when I do, but occasionally it does happen. So I'm on East Coast time. Texas is Central time. So when I switch over, my phone automatically switches over the time.
Yeah.
And then it adjusts my meetings.
Yeah.
But on my computer, it doesn't do that.
Yeah.
So I thought I was meeting with Tim at 2:00, and him and his team had it down for 1:00. So I got there at about 1:30 because I'm like, okay, I'll be early. That'll give us time to just get set up, get a feel for what we're going to do, get settled in. And then at 2:00, when Tim rolls in, we'll be able to record. So I'm thinking I'm a half an hour early. They're thinking I'm a half an hour late. And unfortunately, the meeting got cut off because he was, well, I won't disclose, but he had a hard stop. He was leaving out of country, and he's like, hey, I got to be done at 2:30. So we had like 35 minutes to do the podcast. They were really good about it. Very gracious, very cool and understanding. I just felt like a total dick though, because I just botched it, man. I just messed up. So it does happen from time to time. We did cram a lot and had a really cool conversation in 35 minutes. And then of course did the one with Cam. So it was cool.
Yeah. That sucks.
Yeah, it does. I was supposed to record with Nolan Ryan too. We were able to land a podcast interview with him, and I was supposed to go a couple days earlier than I did to meet with him, but unfortunately they had a scheduling conflict or something come up last minute and we couldn't do it. So we're still in talks with them. So guys, keep your fingers crossed, because Nolan Ryan is arguably the greatest pitcher of all time. Like, he's definitely in the conversation, if not the entire conversation. And just a general hero of mine when I was a kid. Like, he was with the Angels and Astros and, Astros, just a hero of mine. So I was hoping we could have that too, and it didn't pan out. So, things don't always work out according to plan, but we adjust and we adapt and we get through it and we make it work.
Yeah. And Cam Haines, he has a new book out, right?
He does. In fact, got it right here. Actually, so this is his new book. This is a signed copy. I have 3 signed copies. I'm actually giving these away. So guys, if you want a signed copy of Endure by Cam Haines, then what you need to do is you need to leave a rating and review on iTunes, take a screenshot of that rating and review, and then email brandy@orderofman.com with that screenshot. And then you'll be entered in for the drawing that we're doing on Friday of this week. So what is that? That's Friday, the 27th.
Excellent.
So
and you're going to announce that on Friday Field Notes, or how do they know they won? Or just email?
We'll email back whoever won. That's the best way to do it. So, and if you don't get an email, you didn't win. Better luck next time.
Yeah. Copy.
So it's the easy way to do it.
Cool, brother. All right. Should we get into it?
Your week.
It was good. It was productive. Monday? It was just busy. So I have a son graduating high school. So we have a big, typical Hawaiian giant luau in my backyard. So I'm trying to be presentable. And of course it's like, oh, we've always wanted to do that. Let's do it in the next, 3 days. I'm like, okay, that's great. So, and then we're down at the lake, trying to clean up that property that looks like maybe a camp of homeless people showed up and just destroyed the place. So
your property?
We had a trailer on it. We're tearing that trailer down to build. And actually this is a good lesson. So check this out. So we have a single wide trailer and we don't want to just demolish it. Right. So Asia posts online, says, hey, free trailer, anyone who wants it. Guess how many times someone has said, I will take it. And then once they look at it and get into the details, they back out. And I was really contemplating over the weekend. I'm like, how much of this is because we listed it as free and there's zero meat in the game? And everyone's always about like, oh, it's free. And so we constantly get all these people all interested. And I just wonder if we said trailer $1,000.
Yep.
If it would already be gone by now.
I guarantee it would. You should do it. I was going to say throw it up for $500, but whatever it is
just some meat.
It's not even about the money. It's just about them having some skin in the game, you know?
Totally.
And $500 is going to turn off people who are just tire kickers or want free stuff. And there's nothing wrong with wanting free stuff. That's not the problem. The problem is you want to get rid of it and you need somebody who's actually going to take it. So just having some value there, I think goes a long way, and it kind of filters some of that other stuff out of it.
Yeah. So we might do a social experiment. If this last guy is not going to take it, I think we're going to put it up for, maybe we'll just do $500 and just see if that's enough to make it happen. I would. It's also, there's another thing I ran across. This was years and years ago.
One of the guys that I hired as a coaching firm for my financial planning practice had a big event, and he goes all out when he does events.
Yeah.
And I think for the first 100 people that registered, he gave away free computers to these people. And I couldn't go, I couldn't make it for one reason or another. So I just heard about this through the grapevine a little bit.
And did they know that they were getting computers?
They didn't know. They didn't know they were getting computers. He just decided like, hey, he had the computer there, as far as I understand it, on the table with their name on it when they got there. And like, hey, you were one of the first to sign up. Here's a free computer. And he had said how astonished he was at how many people who got the computer complained that it wasn't a Mac, or that it wasn't a PC, or it was just the lower end version, or it didn't have this one particular feature they wanted. And he's like, what more do you want from me? You know, it's the same thing. Like with Elon Musk is a great example of this too. You know, Elon could probably spend, I don't know, $1 million, $2 million, $10 million, $100 million, $1 billion, and just give it away to charities of his choice. And those charities and other people would be like, well, how come he only gave away $1 million? He could probably give away 10 million. Well, how come he only gave $1 billion? He should do 2 billion. Well, how come he gave to this charity? That charity needs help too. It's like, what do you expect from people? You know, it's just, it's so wild to me. It's just a really, really telling sign of the entitlement, I think, that we have as a culture, the how right we think we are, or how much easier we are to put ourselves on a pedestal than other people.
Judgment, it's just quick to
judgment. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Very interesting, man. It's kind of disheartening when you have stuff like that happen. Weird.
Yeah.
Weird. Anyways, cool. Well, let's talk about some questions today.
Yeah, sounds good. So we're fielding questions from Facebook. To join us there, go to facebook.com/group/order of man. Leonardo Diaz, how can we conquer our own biases and other people's at the same time?
So I saw this question, and I like the question because yes, we do all have our own biases, and other people have their own biases. I don't know that you need to worry about conquering other people's biases. That really isn't your responsibility or job. Like if you have a bias towards something, Kip, it's not really my job to quote unquote conquer it. Now, if we're working together in some capacity, I think I would need to explain some things that maybe you're not seeing so that we can work together in a constructive way. But I don't really consider it my job to go out and help people get over their biases. You either have them or you don't. And here's what I'm going to share. And if you like it, great. And if you don't, great. Now, if we're working together, there's one solution to this, I think. And this also covers the first part of that question, which is your own biases. And it's one word. It's curiosity.
Yeah.
If you go out and you try to prove people right or wrong, or try to dismantle their argument or poke holes in what they're saying, like very rarely is it going to be met with any sort of comfort. You know, so it's like people aren't really too excited about
people
that.
Push back. Rarely are you going to ever convince someone or even have a good conversation if you approach it from the perspective of proving someone wrong. Yeah.
Right. And in the new book, It's called the Masculinity Manifesto that's coming out later this fall. I talk a lot about building influence, credibility, and authority and how a man can do that. And one of the pitfalls that I warn against is offering unsolicited advice and feedback. Like, you're not going to build influence by offering, even if you're right, like unequivocally right, you're not going to build influence, credibility, and authority with other people if you're offering unsolicited feedback. Okay. But if you walk into a conversation with a curious mindset, not to get them, not to poke holes, but genuinely, hey, I'm curious about why you think that. If you let people talk about their own stuff long enough, they're going to start working towards some answers. And I've had that myself. You know, I had an interesting disagreement with something that Jordan Peterson said on Instagram the other day. And I was like, no, I don't agree with that. Here's what I agree with. And I made my point. And I heard a lot of people were like, well, he doesn't mean this, he means that. And I've spent some time thinking about it. And I'm like, oh, like in that context, yes, that actually makes sense. And totally. I think I'm closer to his perception or his statement. I don't agree with his word choice, but I'm closer than maybe I thought initially. But that comes from two things. Number one, curiosity in his position. Like, I am genuinely curious about it. I'm not just blowing it up. Like, I'm curious about it. And number two, curiosity in my own position. Am I right? Am I wrong? What flaws do I have in my position? In what ways could I expand my thought process or think about it on a greater level? And so curiosity is really how you overcome your own biases and overcome the biases of others by letting them work through their own issues through a series and a line of powerful questioning.
Yeah. So Ryan, let me ask you this though, because I do feel like there's a little bit of a pendulum here where one could show up in the world, whether in the workplace or in our families, and constantly be all over the place, a chameleon, like, well, you know what, I don't know. I mean, I'm really curious and maybe I'm right and maybe I'm wrong, versus like being a little bit more effective and stern. And I could almost see that level of curiosity affecting your ability to be productive and to lead to some extent as well.
Well, I don't know that you can take curiosity too far.
Okay.
I mean, we hear the adage of like curiosity killed the cat, right? But I think that's different. I don't think you can be too curious, but your curiosity should lead you to something,
to a conclusion of some sort.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Right. Isn't that the reason we question things and people? And isn't that the basis of science even, is like, hey, here's what I think. Here's my hypothesis. And here's the scientific method. And we're going to prove it or disprove it. And then you come to a conclusion. And then now you have a new theory that you can test and has been proven or disproven. Yeah. It's the same with curiosity. Like, yeah, I mean, there's value in just being curious for the sake of curiosity, because you're going to learn a lot of things. But if you're never implementing what you learn, then what's the point? I used to feel the same way about philosophy. I'd see these guys, ponder just stuff that just seemed nonsensical. I'm like, why are we even talking about this? It really didn't click for me until I realized, oh, the reason we pontificate on ideas and theories is so that we can live a better life. That's where it becomes productive. But yeah, you could just spin in this perpetual cycle of learning and being curious.
Yeah.
And it's disingenuous at some point. It's like asking a person a question you already know the answer to. And when people are doing that to you, right? Totally. Or I remember going to have a conversation with somebody, at least I thought it was going to be a conversation, and it felt more like an interrogation. And I didn't feel like that person was genuinely curious. I felt like they were trying to get me. Yeah, that's a problem. And that's definitely not what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I like that. I remember, I'm going to slaughter the quote, but there's some quote I really love is like, thought without conclusion is just wasted energy to some extent. So to paraphrase what you're saying, be creative or be curious, question yourself, question your biases, but follow it to a conclusion versus just leave it in the ether of, well, you never know. And, never identifying ultimately what that means so you can take action on it.
Yeah. One thing I've said in the past is thought without action is worthless. Action without thought is reckless.
Yeah.
And that's very much along the same lines. Like, you shouldn't just act, like you should think about what you're going to do ahead of time. Because if you don't, it might actually work, but it's still reckless. And you shouldn't just think without any action, because why waste your time? That's just worthless.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yehuda Samuel, what are the most important principles for choosing where to live?
Well, I would say lifestyle would be important. So if being out in the wilderness, or you like the mountains, or you like the lake, or you like the beach, or whatever, then I think the environment that way is important, because you're going to be able to enjoy that place more. I think having other value-driven organizations would be important. So that might be church. It might be access to community clubs and a community center. I think about some of these adult living communities, 55, 65 plus communities. That makes sense to me, because there's golf. Usually it's on a golf course, right? They have activities at the main meeting place, wherever they do that, a community center. They've got a pool. There's other people their age. And so value-based organizations, maybe it's a charity that you want to belong to. Crime rates for me is definitely important. That's a big deal. Politics is an important thing. I really don't want to live in a very liberal area, because I don't agree with those politics. And so I'm going to look for a more conservative area to live, because that's the way that I want to live my life. And that's the way that I would like the people who are representing me and other people to govern. So that's important. If you have young kids, obviously school is an important factor. If you are putting them in the public school system, even if you're not, I think the schooling district is a pretty crucial component, because that's who your kids are going to hang out with. So, I mean, there's 5 or 6 right offhand that I think would be important metrics for where you live.
Yeah. And on the schooling side, all that data is available. When we moved to New York for a few years, it was like, where do we live in New York? It was almost 100% determined on where would Kiawe go to kindergarten.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we literally chose where we lived based upon where kindergarten was located and how good the school was and how it was rated nationally and stay on the state level. So some of that stuff's available. So
there's another a couple of factors that I would look at too, is if you go to a house in a community that you like, and it seems like it's a great place and you feel comfortable with it, but you go at 2:00 in the afternoon, go back at 8:00 in the evening. Because it could change, or maybe it doesn't, but it's going to be different at 8. If you went on Tuesday morning, then you probably should go back on Saturday afternoon. Right. So times of the day, days of the week, those are different depending on the weekend and time. I would also drive around the community. It isn't just about your house, it's about the community. So I've seen some places where there's these big, beautiful homes, and then you go 3 houses down or a block or 2 down, and all of a sudden it's like you're in the slums.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really
are you okay
close
with that? Because that's really close. So crime rates will probably increase in that instance. Property values will be lower in that case. So there's some other considerations there that you need to be aware of.
Soil. There's actually like reports that you can actually get soil breakdowns of where your neighborhood is located, if it's like close to fault lines, or the quality of the soil, if it's at risk for other things. And there's lots of stuff we can come up with. One thing that crosses my mind is like, well, I mean, New York, I'll use 2 examples of 2 places I lived, Phoenix and New York. From a disaster perspective, horrible places to live, right? New York, you lose power in New York, that city's a shit show, like within a couple of days, right? If there's 0 power. The other thing that crosses my mind around Phoenix is there's natural resources. Where do they get all their water? What happens when that water can't get to Phoenix anymore, right? So, I mean, not to be like a doomsdayer, but I would be thinking about your ability to provide in the event of difficult circumstances as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I feel a little bit bad about that response, because it's like, you should look at everything. Yeah, and you should. But you're asking what are the most important factors? Here's what I would say if I had to sum it up. No, they're important considerations, but like we went off, right?
Yeah, totally.
Here's what I would say. Climate. That would be really important for me. And that also includes geography. So outdoors, lake, that sort of thing. So environment.
Are we doing top 5? Are we doing 5 here?
No, 3.
Okay.
Yep. So climate, geography. Number 2, politics. That's important. And then number 3 is the community. That's the 3 things I would say.
There you go. All right. We could have shortened that quite up with just the 3. All right.
No, they're important considerations though. We should talk about them.
Yeah. Is your idea of masculinity dictated by capitalism, or should it? And should it? I'm sorry.
No. Masculinity is not determined by capitalism or any other societal construct. I know people like to throw the socially constructed thing out there, but in this case, capitalism is a societal construct. We've constructed it in order to hopefully serve everybody.
Transfer of goods.
Possible.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it is a society. It's a construction made up by members of society. Like that's the definition of a societal construct.
Agnostic of masculinity. Yeah.
Yeah. But masculinity is not, that's not what masculinity is. Masculinity is a set of characteristics, patterns, behaviors, beliefs based on your biological makeup, period. That's it. It's not good. It's not bad. It's not influenced by society. That's all it is. And I know this because there's been research from tribes and cultures and organizations and men who have not even been introduced to each other, who have striking similarities between what it means to be a man. The propensity for violence is a masculine characteristic. Okay. The desire to dominate is a masculine characteristic. The desire to be tribal, to be protective, to compete. These are masculine characteristics, and culture doesn't dictate it. And capitalism or socialism or communism doesn't dictate it. It just is, because we've been biologically hardwired to operate that way. Now, that said, there is another element here that can be constructed or can be refined or honed based on society's acceptance or massaging of the way that we behave as men. So if I was a Viking warrior 1,000 years ago, I would be defined as being manly based on how many people I killed and how many women I was with. That's a loose interpretation, right?
Yeah.
But I think you guys all get the point. It's about conquering, raping, pillaging, taking, dominating, and the tribe would consider me a man if I was successful in those endeavors, right?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Now, I think generally, not exclusively, but generally, we would say a man is somebody who has a family, has children, is leading them effectively, has an income, takes care of other people, serves his community. Again, generally, this is, I think, what most people would say is manly behavior. Okay, well, that's different than it was 1,000 years ago because society has changed.
Yeah.
Right. So my definition of manliness, not masculinity, there's the difference. And it's not just semantics. It's very important we understand the distinction, because my sons can be masculine, but they're not men. We don't even expect them to be men. Like my youngest, he's feisty, to put it mildly. And when he doesn't get what he wants, what does he do? He punches or he scratches or he bites. That's masculine. Okay. He's like, if I don't get what I want, I'm going to assert myself and take it. That's masculine. But it isn't manly because it's not refined.
Yeah.
Like, I appreciate that he wants to vehemently go after what he wants, but there's a better way to do it. And I got to teach him how to be manly. So this is not an insignificant distinction between the two. Now, to answer the question, so I had to give the backstory there.
Yeah.
Capitalism is rooted in manliness. It's rooted in manliness. Because what does it mean? It means that you have a good or a skill or a possession that you've acquired, that you've earned, that you've developed. It's marketable. You're going to go out and serve other people. You're going to trade with other men of goods and services. You believe in the power of individualism. You believe in personal property rights, that you have a right to own things and other people have a right to own things and you don't get to infringe upon those things. But if I want something, Kip, that you have, then we need to come to an agreement. Like if I want that microphone that you have and you want that skull that I have, then we have to mutually agree upon it. And until that happens, no trade takes place.
Yeah.
Socialism is not rooted in masculine or in manliness at all. It says that there's one person or party that gets to dictate the price of everything, that gets to be the sole source of production, control, manipulation, taking
lack of
from
sovereignty,
one party, giving it to other, no individual rights. Socialism is not rooted in manliness, but capitalism is rooted in manliness. Now, I will say this, because I know already people are thinking this. Capitalism can be taken advantage of, and that's not manly, right? So when I, as a provider of goods and services, rip clients off, you could say that's capitalism. No, that's not what capitalism is. That's a misuse of the capitalistic system, but it isn't capitalism, and it isn't manly, because now you're stealing from somebody else. And I don't consider that to be a manly quality or characteristic. Masculine, maybe, because you want what I have and I'm going to take it, but certainly not manly.
Yeah, totally.
Because there is crony capitalism, there is manipulation, there is greed. I'm not so oblivious to not acknowledge those things exist, but that's not a byproduct of the capitalistic system. That's a byproduct of humans. Exactly. Yeah. Screw things up. So yes, there are faults and problems, but you can't show me another system as effective in lifting people out of poverty, in innovation, in competition that drives innovation and lowers prices and makes things more efficient and effective, that leads to more wealth and abundance, that leads to medical care, that leads to advancements in technology. There's not a better system out there than capitalism, driven by, and at its foundation, an element of manliness.
Love it. Austin King, in his book, Jordan Peterson has his 9th rule, which is to assume the person you're listening to might know something you don't. With that, how do you find the balance in being open-minded enough to listen to people who may know more than you on certain topics, while also staying convicted enough to vehemently defend your beliefs? Essentially, how do you stay humble enough to change your mind while also being convicted enough to what you know to defend what you believe is true?
I really don't think those two positions are at odds with each other.
Yeah.
And just because you listen to somebody or hear another opinion doesn't mean, like, if you're threatened by that, then I would say you need more work in being convicted in your beliefs. Like I'm never threatened by anything else that I hear. I may not agree with it. I actually might think it's dangerous even.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain ideology, transgenderism, critical race theory. Like there's certain ideology that I think is very dangerous. Socialism, communism, those are dangerous ideas. That doesn't threaten my own worldview. I want to hear what you have to say, because it's so far out of the realm of my own thought process that in a lot of cases, I can't even believe that certain people would think the way they do. But that doesn't mean I'm not willing to hear them out. And if you're curious, like we talked about earlier, then what you're going to do is you're going to ponder on a statement that's made, and you're going to ask yourself, is that true? Here's the 2 questions I would ask. Is that true? And does that serve me?
Yeah. And
if the answer is no to either one of those, I really don't have to go any further
and move on. Yeah.
If the answer is yes, there isn't, even if the entirety is not true, but yes, there is an element of truth to that thing that's being said, that opinion, that perspective, that ideology. And yes, I can see how if I incorporate that into my life, that I will be served better through ... then I think you probably ought to entertain that thought. I think that would be a good idea. I also look to the credibility of people as well. And uncredible, is that what it is? Uncredible? That doesn't sound right. Uncredible. People who are not credible, I'll say it that way, can actually get things right. They can get lucky and they can get things right, but just be cautious. So when people are sharing ideas, like Jordan Peterson's a great example. Well, he's pretty credible.
Yeah.
He's got degrees in psychology. He was clinically trained. He's been in practice. He's had thousands, I'm sure, of patients. He's talked with people. That's pretty credible. I think I'm going to listen. But if I'm going to listen to the guy who picks up my garbage talk about clinical depression, I'm like, okay, well, that's not a credible
information from somewhere else. Yeah,
exactly. And so could he be right? Yeah, he could get something right. But again, there's a little litmus test there to know whether or not this is somebody worth listening to.
Yeah, for sure. Who wrote Fifth Agreement? Is it Miguel Luis, right?
Yeah. Don.
Yeah.
Is it Don Miguel Ruiz? Don
Luis. Yeah.
Ruiz.
Look it up.
Holy cow.
So he has two books, the Fourth Agreement and the Fifth Agreement. And the Fifth Agreement, he adds a fifth agreement, and it's to be what is it? Really to question everything. But and I'm going to add my definition to it. Question from the perspective that everyone has a story. And it's their perception. And what you're sharing with me, Ryan, is often a combination of maybe knowledge that you have, but your experiences, as well as how it relates to you and what it means about you as an individual with what you're sharing. And when you package that up and we listen, man, that's so powerful, right? Because now someone's sharing from what perspective? To validate their own options? Are they sharing because they want to make sure that they feel good about the decision they made? What's the real motive of the share? And I think in that, not only can we possibly consider someone else's point of view, but we can actually learn from them, right? Even the LGBTQ or the gender discussion, it's actually very interesting to even still hear the debate, because now you can start listening from a place of humanity and understand why. What is the human behavior? Why is this so critical? Why are you losing your emotions in this debate and you're not willing to look at this logically? What does it mean about you if you're wrong? Man, there's just so much to learn about humans and about why they're taking a stand or why they're willing to debate about something if you go beyond just what they're saying and consider what it means about them.
And I would also say you don't have to care about everything. That's one thing people need to be aware of is it seems like everybody wants to have an opinion about everything. And the fact of the matter is there's just certain things I just don't care about. Yeah. And that's okay. You don't need to have an opinion. Sometimes not having a response is the response. That isn't important to me. I'm not going to waste brain cells on that. Yeah. But if it is important, then you should learn. You should. So I pulled this up, Kit, just to give you some support here on this one. It is Don Miguel Ruiz. So we had that right.
Don Miguel Ruiz. Okay.
Yeah. Ruiz, Ruiz, Ruiz. And the fifth agreement is, I'm just pulling it up here. Be skeptical, but learn to listen. That's the fifth agreement.
Yeah. There you go.
And I like that word choice of skeptical versus pessimistic.
Yeah.
Because it is easy to become a pessimist. And a pessimist to me is somebody who's just always negative. They're looking to poke holes in arguments, to fight, to be contentious because they don't agree with it or they don't like it. And they're looking for it to be wrong. And that's not what we should be doing. If we go back to the scientific method, you shouldn't have an opinion about your data. You should have a hypothesis, and then you should try to get to the root of it without an opinion about it, because the opinion is going to cloud it. So if you're like, hey, I really want this to work, then it's going to cloud your experiment and you're going to come up with a faulty conclusion. And it's the same thing when you're trying to have discussions. If you have this really heavy opinion about the way it should be, and you're not trying to set that aside, even momentarily, to give somebody an honest shake with a discussion that's important to you, then I think you're doing yourself a disservice. So let it go and just try to look at it as objectively as possible. Yes, be skeptical, meaning you ask questions and you try to figure out where the flaws are and what's right and what's wrong, but not to make it wrong, to really get to the root of the matter.
Yeah. Which to his point, and listen requires to an attempt to understand, which is perfect.
Yeah. Cool.
Jason Fortreed, should the church do more to promote and support home education over public schooling? If so, what would that look like?
I would be careful with should. I don't really know. I mean, if a congregation, if I would say if a church congregation or certain denomination decided that that was going to help move people closer to God, then I would say, yes, the church has an obligation and responsibility to do that. I do believe that the family unit is a divine structure, is a divine setup. And so to me, I'm just kind of thinking out loud that anything that brings the family closer together, that turns, as they say, the hearts of the fathers to their children and the children or the hearts of the fathers to their children and vice versa, is probably a good thing. Like that's probably what we should be doing. So I guess I would say, yes, I would hope that the church would encourage family learning, family growth, family development, the parents stepping into the role fully by educating their children, maybe not exclusively, but certainly being more involved in it.
Yeah.
And what does that look like? Well, I think it looks like providing guidance and direction and even training and resources and bringing in specialists and offering support and having nights and getting the children together who maybe aren't going to a public school together in the chapel to do, homeschool learning and being together and learning how to play basketball or read the gospel together and interact in a social environment. There's a lot of things the church can do. So I haven't heard that question. It's a very interesting question. So I'm kind of rambling, I think, a little bit, but I'm also just thinking out loud. I would say, yeah, anything that will move families closer together is, I would say is a divine directive. We've been called to operate as family units. So yes, I would say yes.
Manish Thakrar, how to figure out your path when you feel like you've lost your way?
Don't figure out the path, just figure out the next step.
Don't look too far ahead.
Don't look too far. I know there's a lot of like goal setting and vision, and we talk a lot about that.
Yeah.
But when you've lost your way, and I've lost my way, Kip, I know you've lost your way. Like we've all been in dark places. It's overwhelming. If you're in a dark tunnel, like you just stepped in this tunnel, it's dark. And you don't even see any light anywhere. It's like really overwhelming to think that you're going to get out of this tunnel.
Yeah.
But you're certainly capable of taking one step. You can definitely do that. And when you're done with that and you have your footing under you, you can take another one. Like you can do that. And then 100th and then 1,000th and then a 10,000th step. And then maybe on that 10,000 first step, you see a little pinprick of light in front of you, in the center of you. And you're like, oh, what is that? And you take another step and it gradually grows and it gets bigger and bigger. And then you start to have hope. Now you're visualizing the future. Like, oh, that's where I want to go. I didn't know, but I want to go there. And so now you pick up the pace, right? And you have hope and optimism. And let's say you might see it and then you step on a rock you didn't see and you roll your ankle and you fall down. Well, you look and you're like, okay, that hurts, but there's a light. I got to get back up. But you don't get to see the light until you take the first step. That's the point I'm making.
Yeah.
So really, I don't want guys who are in the pit of despair right now to be like, what vision planning and goal setting, and should I go climb Mount Everest? I mean, if you have enough hope and you think you can do that, then I'm not going to say don't do it. But if you don't feel like you can, don't be disheartened about it. Don't think you're a bad person or you're an idiot or a fool or you should kill yourself. People think that. They're depressed. Just get up and just take a step. Like if you went through a divorce, the first thing you can do is get up and brush your teeth. Like you can do that.
Yeah.
I know you don't want to, but you can do that. And then when you're done with that, you can take a shower and you could go downstairs and cook yourself some eggs. And you could call a friend and say, hey, I'd like to go to the gym. Will you come with me? And then you can go back into work. Like these are small steps that you can do. And we shouldn't overlook how important those things are when you're in the pit of despair. And then one day, and maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's a year, maybe it's less, maybe it's more, you won't really even think about that. It'll be a distant memory that sucked. You remember it sucked, but you're not dwelling in it. You're not in it. You're out of it. And you can move forward the way that you want to move forward.
Ryan, would you add any recommendations on those steps, right? Like I know you gave an example, like just keep moving, brush your teeth, go to work, you know what I mean? Cook some breakfast. But let's say they're doing just those bare minimums. They're still in that dark place. What is the step, right? Do you have some recommendations? Is it a minor step in a direction that you should be? Is it at least a step in the areas of your physical well-being at a minimum, with maybe some steps from a spiritual side? Like, what would you recommend those steps be?
So there's a few realms that I would say. So I'll talk about broadly, and then I'll give you some specifics in each of those realms. So it's the realms that you need to improve are mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual. Those are the realms.
Balance.
Mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. So as long as what you're doing is moving you in the right direction in each of or all of those 4 realms, you're going in the right direction. So if it's mental, then you need to stimulate your mind, because here's what happens for guys that are dealing with depression, or a divorce, a bankruptcy, a lawsuit, like any number of things that could happen, a medical issue, is they don't stimulate their mind. And then what happens? The mind starts stimulating itself. It's like, okay, well, this is going wrong. This is why you're a loser. You're an idiot. And you should kill yourself, and nobody loves you, and everything's going wrong. And it's going to be like this forever. That's your mind trying to stimulate itself. We have these things called cognitive distortions. You guys should look it up. I dealt with this. I don't deal with it as much anymore. I still do. But when something goes wrong, our minds automatically jump to the worst possible scenario. It's a defense mechanism. It's a survival technique.
Survival technique. Yeah.
That's all it is. But you need to be aware of it, because what you're going through likely isn't going to kill you. Okay. Now, if you're out walking the street at 10 o'clock at night and you see a shady person and they have a gun or a knife, you should probably jump to the worst case scenario in that. Like, hey, that person's going to try to kill me. They're going to try to stab me or shoot me and steal my money. And you should probably jump to the worst case scenario and get yourself out of that environment. But the overwhelming majority of what we deal with is not the end of the world. I promise you. Okay. Like, let's say, here's one. Your wife calls you in the middle of the day and she's like, "Hon, I really need to talk with you tonight. Can we talk this evening when you get home?" What's your mind doing right now already?
Yeah.
She's leaving me. She's cheating on me. She caught me doing something I know I shouldn't have been doing. We're going to get an argument. The world's going to end. She's going to take my kids, and then she actually just wants to talk with you about the summer vacation plans that you have.
Yeah.
So like our minds do some crazy stuff. So stimulate your mind. So that's mental. Emotional is developing some emotional resilience and building in some strategies that are going to help you overcome when you are feeling emotional. And when you're going through difficult times, you're sad, you're mad, you're angry, you're guilty, this whole range of emotions. And so you can act out on those things, or you can realize that, yes, I'm angry right now and I feel betrayed. And so here's what I'm going to do to overcome these thoughts. I'm going to make myself better. I'm going to surround myself with better people. I'm not going to allow these emotions to dictate my behavior. I'm going to consider my emotions, but then I'm going to make rational decisions. And here's my decision-making process. And you start working through what that is, and then putting some defense mechanisms in for yourself. Like when I get angry about something or stressed, cool. I'm going to put everything down, push myself out from the desk, put my phone down, and I'm just going to go walk around for an hour. And I tell my wife, "Hun, I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to go for a drive." And that's some emotional tools that I use. Physical, that's pretty easy. Just go to the gym. Maybe it's not even the gym. Maybe it's just, hey, you know what? Just get up and do 20 push-ups right now. Or I've got weights all over. I've got Indian clubs and kettlebells and different weights. And so like, I'll pick them up. I've got like a hatchet right there, and I'll just hold
Throw
it
at
in
the
air.
wall.
Yeah. Just smash shit with it.
Emotional.
Just like hold it in the air, or I'll put it behind my back and like stretch out my tries and shoulders and do extensions and do push-ups. Like I might stand at my desk. This is a desk that goes up and down. I might stand and just like, just try to move.
Yeah.
Or you go to the gym or go to jujitsu. Okay. So that's physical. And then spiritual, just read the Bible, read Don Miguel Ruiz, you could read that, like anything spiritually related. When I say that, I'm talking about higher purpose. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. So it could be something with God, something religious. It could be something that calls you to be a better person, to serve in some charitable capacity, to maybe get inspiration from other people who are spiritual that you want to learn from, that you're inspired by. It could be go to church. It could go to a charity or like a food bank and serve. These are all spiritual components that you can be doing. But those are the realms, and there's a few ideas on what you could do.
Cool. I think,
but don't dismiss it because it's small. Like, that's what I would say.
Yeah.
Like imagine that you're 50 pounds overweight, and some of you guys are, and more right now. And you're thinking to yourself, man, I just want to get in shape, but I'm 50 pounds overweight. Like, I'll never.
This is going to take forever. Can't see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
This is not going to be possible.
And then you think to yourself, well, maybe I'll go to the gym. And then the next breath, you're like, yeah, but I don't have anything to wear to the gym. Like, people are going to stare at me. It's hard. If I go to the gym, that's not going to do anything. Like, go to the gym once is not going to do anything. It's something, or maybe you just decide, hey, I'm going to stop drinking Coke. That's something. There's something to be said for that. And then when you get a handle on that, then I'm going to cut out all processed sugars. And then when you get on a handle on that, you're like, you know what? I'm going to do food prep now. I'm going to prepare my meals ahead of time. And when you get a handle on that, you're like, I'm losing weight. Like, I feel pretty good, but I'd like to build some muscle. And so I'm going to pick up some heavy things. And so you do that, you just build upon it. That's all I'm saying. Go back and listen to the Friday Field Notes. I think I titled it The Power of Incremental Improvement. And that will actually talk a lot about what we're talking about right now.
Okay. I think we did Manish a solid there. All right. Christian Maldonado. How do you feel with an unsupportive mother-in-law as a man? How do you deal with it? How do you deal with an unsupported mother-in-law?
I'm not really too wrapped up in what my mother-in-law thinks of me. I mean, I'm not going to say it's not important, because she's got a lot of weight with your wife.
Yeah. It will affect you whether you like it or not. Yeah,
totally. So I'm not really going to try to win her over. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be the best damn husband for my wife. And when mother-in-law makes snippy comments or says something rude or whatever, my wife's going to be like, what are you talking about? Like, he's home every night. He's putting food on the table. We are connected. He's asking about me. He cares for our kids. He goes out of his way. He makes sacrifices for us, but then he also makes sacrifices to be with us. Like, and that anything that she would say is just at complete odds with the way that your wife feels about you. Yeah. And that I wouldn't do that for my mother-in-law. I would do that for myself first, not actually my wife first. I do that for myself first, and also for my wife. And the byproduct is, something that, better relationship potentially with your mother-in-law. Now, I know there's vindictive people out there. And in that case, what I would say is, you and your wife, you need to be able to establish that influence with your wife, but then you also need to talk about the boundaries that you have in place. Because if you have that level of influence with your wife and you have those concerns, she's going to hear those concerns. And then you're going to have to say, hey, hon, we really need to put some boundaries in place, because your mom is a toxic factor in our relationship and the relationship with our kids. And I'm not going to have that come between you and me, or between us and our children. And if you're doing what you should be doing and all the things that you committed to, she's going to respect that, and she's going to work with you on that. There's tactful ways you have to do it, but she will work with you on that.
Yeah.
But if you're not doing it and then you say, hey, let's set a boundary, she's like, screw you. Who are you?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You're the asshole that my mom warns me about. Right. Why would I listen
she's
to you?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kevin Anderson, how can I maintain a positive environment for my daughter, age 7, and my son, age 1.5, when mom acts as though she prefers to be a part-time parent? It angers me, but I don't want my kids to feel my emotions about the situation. Obviously, we are separated, so I have no choice but to control my end of the situation.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. You really just said it. And you know what? I would actually, people are going to say things like, oh, you're being a beta, you're being a cuck. This is what people are going to say when I say this, but I don't think it is like, appreciate your ex when she's doing things right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe she doesn't want to be there all the time. Maybe she hates her kids the majority of the time. Maybe she hates you. Maybe she's an evil person. Maybe she's into drugs. Like maybe she cheated on you. I mean, there's 1,000 things it could be, but there's also some things that she might have got right. Like she picked up the kids and she showed up on time and they went to the park and they had a great day and the kids were excited. And it was only for 2 hours, but like, okay, cool. That's what she can give. Like maybe drop the expectations. It sounds like to me that the kids are with him full time. That's kind of what I'm gathering.
Yeah.
She only wants to be a part-time mom. That's kind of,
and I'm wondering, or she's just checked out whenever the kids are with her. Right.
Yeah. And that's unfortunate, so I would definitely say, fight for your rights too. I don't know if you have custody, but if you don't, then maybe that's a battle you want to consider. But, there's probably some things she's getting right, and acknowledge those, because you could dwell on the negatives, but what's that going to change? It's nothing. It's only going to get worse. So, hey, you know what? Yeah, maybe she's not a great mom, but they had a good day today and I'll take it.
Yeah. And there's one thing he wrote here that kind of raised up a red flag for me. He says, but I don't want my kids to feel my emotions about the situation. And the answer is they will. So change your emotions about the situation.
Right.
There is no like, I feel this way, but I'm going to hide it. No. You need to change the way you feel about it, which, to your point, Ryan, have some empathy, understand where mom's at, try to deal with your emotions, because they're going to pick it up. If you're pissed off at mom all the time and you think she's worthless, that's going to come across. And guess what? That's their mom. And that their identity is tied to mom. So, and it sounds a little extreme, but if you're bitching about mom, you're bitching about them.
Oh, totally. It's not extreme at all.
That's how the kids are going to see it. So you better change your mindset or you're attacking your kids.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I was thinking about it. Like when you talk negative, think about this. How do you feel when people talk negatively about people that you like?
Yeah, it offends you.
Yeah, I'm like, screw you, buddy. Like, I don't want to be around you. Like, I like that person. I care about that person. And you're going to talk poorly about them. So basically, you're talking poorly about somebody I love, but that's an indictment against me too.
Yeah.
Like you're insulting me for even being in that relationship or feeling the way that I feel about that person. So think about what your kids are experiencing. Now think about, on the other hand, hey, you know what? Your mom really cares about you. Man, she took you to the park today. That's awesome. You guys must have had a great time. Or when the kids say something great about mom, like, oh, she cooked us dinner. Like, you don't have to love the woman to say, well, that's awesome. How was it? Oh, it was delicious. Good. She was always a great cook.
Yeah.
You don't have to love the woman to say that.
Yeah. And they'll feel more loved by you expressing that reaction against their mom. Yeah.
And then I hear guys will say, well, but my wife's talking poorly about me. Well, yeah. And they're going to have that. The kids are going to have that feeling towards their mother. So as they get older, what's going to happen? They're going to naturally want to be around you and not around her, because they feel good and encouraged and edified and uplifted and special when they're with you. And they may not feel that way when they're with their mother. So that's fine. Let it play out. It's good. Trust me. Okay. There's nothing she could say or do that would undermine their own experience with you.
Yeah.
And she actually might try to make you out as the villain. But when the kids come and see you, if you play the part, then you just made her right.
Yep.
But if they come and see you and you're not the villain, you're the hero. They're like, Dad's awesome when he spends time with us and we watch, funny movies together. We go to the movies and he gets us popcorn and too many candies. And then we do we made a tent and we had a sleepover and we did all this cool stuff. And then they go home and she's like, yeah, he's evil. They're like, what are you talking about? They might not vocalize it, but they know
Totally.
The truth of it.
Totally. And it's hard, Kevin, like we all know this, right? if you know that your ex is speaking ill about you to your kids, when you go pick them up, the natural instinct will be, my kids don't care. My kids don't want to hang out with me. They think this about me because of their mom. So you actually start like almost like self-fulfilling prophecy, show up as though you're already the demon and they don't want to be around you. And it just perpetuates the narrative even more. Right.
Yeah.
One more thought really quick. One of my favorite books, Outward Mindset, Harbinger Institute. They have the pyramid. And at the top of the pyramid is ultimately when we have influence. And I always thought this was really interesting. The bottom and the base of the pyramid is establishing relationship. That's number 2. Guess what's below that? Establishing a relationship with people of influence. So you want to be in a position to affect your kids in a positive way. Guess what? Guess who has great influence over them? Their mom. You need to have a relationship with her, because it then puts you in a better area of authority to be able to be in a position to coach your children. So if not for yourself, if not for them, do it from a perspective of what do I need to do or how do I need to show up to be able to influence my kids in a positive way. And it is a relationship with their mom, whether you like it or not.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Cool. Any more questions, or we get through them
all? No, we didn't get through them all.
Oh,
you good for one more, or
no? Yeah, let's take one more. No problem.
Okay. Michael Volkenberg, 2-part question related to sports. What's a good tactic for teaching your young boys to be aggressive when it's needed? And number 2, how do you teach kids not to be afraid of the ball? I like that segment.
The ball's easy. You just hit them in the face with it a bunch of times until they get over it.
You hit them with the bat, and then they're like, "Oh, hey, I prefer the ball. Throw the ball at me. Dodge a wrench." Yeah.
I don't know. I guess when my kids were younger, if they were afraid, I'd be like, "Throw that ball at me. Like, just throw it at me."
Yeah.
And like hit me in the back with it or something, or in the chest, like as hard as you can, throw it at me. And they'd throw it. And I'm like, yeah, that's hurt, but I'm still here.
I'm okay. Yeah.
And it's all right. Like, it hurts. Like, sometimes you're going to get hit with a ball, and that's just part of the deal. And so, can I throw this ball at you now? I won't do it hard, but can I throw this at you? And they're like, yeah. And so you throw the ball at them. Like, you don't beat them with the ball. You just throw it at them. And you're like, did that hurt? And they say, yeah, that hurt. And you're like, okay. And well, I'm okay. Right. That's just part of life. And so it's a psychological principle of introducing people to the things they're scared of. You introduce gradually in controlled environments, and then over time, they become less and less scared of it. This is a psychological principle. And I think it's the same with, yeah, of course, they're going to be scared. Like, whether it's a baseball or a football whizzing at their face, like, any human's going to be scared of that.
Yeah.
Right. So you just teach them to deal with it. That, yeah, it hurts, but pain isn't like the end all be all. It's just, it is what it is.
And when do you get hurt by the ball? When you're afraid of it. Right. Like, those are the times that you're going to end up taking the baseball to the face, right? Is when you're timid from it. I remember when Kiabi was younger, I told him, if you don't aggressively go to the ball will hurt you.
Yeah, totally.
And so when we played catch, it was, you go to the ball. Don't like let the ball come to you and then end up having it pop out of your mitt and hit you in the face. Right. Like, you have to go to the ball and you show the ball who's boss. Then the ball won't hurt you. You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, anyhow, there's your ball tactics, but,
I was going to say, I think this will answer that question too, is I reward good behavior just through enforcement of that good behavior. So if for example, one of your kids, like my second son, he scraped his knee, he was skateboarding the other day, he fell off and he scraped his knee. I didn't say, oh, that hurts. And I'm sorry. I'm like, that's awesome.
Good job. Yeah.
That scar is awesome. Like, look how cool that thing looks. I'm like, does it hurt? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, can I touch it? And he's like, no. I'm like, no, I want to touch it. Like, I want to feel it. Like, so I'll go touch it. And I'm like, I know that hurts, but like, that's awesome. Look at mine. Look at this scar. Look at that. Look at this. Look. Oh, I don't know if you knew this, but when I was a kid, I was doing a tricycle race and I got cut by a palm. I ran into a palm tree and I got this scar. Look how cool that was. And it's cool. And all of a sudden it's like, yeah, it hurts, but that's minimal compared to the fact that dad thinks I'm cool because I have this scrape or this cut or this bruise or black eye or broken finger or whatever. Like casts are cool. When a kid gets a cast, you're like, dude, that's rad.
Yeah.
Like not everybody gets to wear a cast.
Yeah.
You broke your arm.
Wipeout was awesome.
Awesome.
Good job. Way to get back up. Yeah.
Yeah. It was awesome. But it's the same thing with aggression too, right? When your kid shows that moment of aggression, it's like, hey, you know what? Awesome. You missed the play or whatever, or missed the tackle or didn't hit the base or whatever. But like what I'm proud about is how aggressive you were. That was really cool. The other thing I would say is that your young children, a lot of the times are going to learn more from their peers than they're going to learn from you. So you can't really teach them some of these things. They have to be around other boys specifically, and they have to get dirty and fight and get mad at each other,
arguments,
and punch and argue and push. Like they have to do that. Okay. Within reason. And I think too often we interject. Like, you remember you see a fight at school and like all the teachers rushing. I'm like, well, hold on. Like maybe actually we should let them fight.
Play this out a little bit. Yeah.
Like we don't want anybody to get hurt, of course, but like maybe the best thing that can happen is those two men or young men at school can punch each other a little bit and they'll come to some understanding. I don't know if that's right. I'm just kind of curious if maybe we ought to let that happen a little more.
Totally.
Right. So I think that's something you could do is get them involved around other boys. And the other thing you need to be aware of is that, well, my oldest son, and a lot of you guys know him, Brecken, was never a really aggressive kid. Like I sounded very much similar to what you're asking. Like, how do I get him to be more aggressive? I saw something in him one time when he was little and he just wasn't aggressive. He wasn't a go-getter. He liked sports, but just wasn't real aggressive compared to the other kids. And then we did a Spartan race and I saw something in him that I like never saw before. Like the light just like clicked. And then we started doing other things, jujitsu and things like this. And he got into powerlifting. And I see something in him in that he just never had at any other sport. Never. And he's got this friend that he really, really likes and respects, and they're good friends. And he had his friend come to lifting with him. And his coach sent me a text. He's like, hey, send his friend with him every time. I saw something in Brecken I've never seen before, because he's competing with his friend. Yeah. He wants to beat his friend. Yeah. So that's the peer thing. And then also it's finding the right avenues. Like what he's doing, he may not be super aggressive in. Also, he may just never be an aggressive kid on the field. Like he may never. And that's okay. But you better get comfortable with it, because some kids just aren't going to be that. My daughter's not. Yeah. Like she kind of is like little pokey, just kind of runs. I'm like, what are you doing? Like I get so frustrated, but I'm like, oh no, she's not. Like it's different. And that's okay. That's fine. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I remember the first time I took Kika to jiu-jitsu, and they were preparing for a tournament. It was a really bad time to start her off. And because the kids are like matched up and they're doing like tournament style. Yeah. And we left. I'm like, hey, how was it, honey? Did you have a good time? She's like, I felt like those kids were trying to hurt me. And I was like,
yes, they were.
Well, kind of. She's like, I don't like that feeling, I'm like, yeah, okay. But then she does gymnastics, and no joke, they had a class party, and it was a challenge. Whoever could practice the most back handsprings in a class.
I saw it. This was this weekend?
No, that was her showcase, but that was her.
Oh, got it. Yeah. Her
flipping all over the mat.
Yeah.
This girl came home and did thousands of back handsprings by herself. She won the party. If none of her classmates even participated, she outdid the other classes all on her own.
That's awesome.
Wicked aggressive and just, you know what I mean? But to your point, there was just a spark, and she was just willing to grind out some serious reps for that sport. Yeah. But jiu-jitsu, she's kind of like, you know what? I kind of don't like someone trying to choke me, right?
Yeah. Brecken's the same way. So. Brecken doesn't even really like to wrestle or with me. Like, I'm like, what's your problem? Like, let's fight. He's like, I don't want to. Like, he just doesn't like that. And my second and my fourth, all day long. My fourth, he'll come up and just kick me just for no reason and be like, let's fight. Like, okay. But then in the gym, my oldest is like, hey, I bet I can deadlift more than you. Totally. I'm like, cool, let's do it. And I still can beat him right now.
Yeah.
But he's way more aggressive there. He just doesn't want to wrestle. He doesn't want to do jiu-jitsu, but he's just as aggressive in that vein. So maybe you look for another vein.
Yeah. So celebrate the behavior consistently, right? Second, figure out what areas they can find aggression in, or where they might be aggressive interests, whether they be hobbies or different sports.
Yep. And hit them more with the ball, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And if they're afraid of the ball, throw them the bat and see what happens.
I don't know. I don't have this stuff figured out at all. It's so interesting raising kids, and
it is.
I would say this with the consistency of celebrating is we always celebrate winning, right? Like that's what we celebrate. That's what we used to celebrate. Now we just celebrate participation.
Yeah.
I don't think we should celebrate participation. I think we should celebrate excellence, whether we win or lose.
The behavior. Yeah.
The behavior. So if at baseball, your kid steals second and he goes as hard as he can and he gets thrown out, it's like, yeah, well, that didn't work. But you know what? I saw you run as hard as you could. And that's going to be more important the younger they are, I think. But if you start building up that way, the wins will come. The wins will take care of themselves. But if you start building up young, celebrating the effort, celebrating the behavior, the wins will stack.
Yeah. I love this conversation. I was having this conversation with the wife a few weeks ago about if you really think your kids are thriving to identify themselves. It's like identity crisis. And it's interesting. Just, consider the thought process. What's the drawback of you going to Brecken saying, Brecken, you're so talented. Brecken, you're such a great athlete. Brecken, you're so this. Brecken, you're so that. And then what happens when he's not? What happens if he gets injured and he's not an athlete anymore? Or the other kids all of a sudden catch up with him and they're better athletes than he is. Then what? His world comes crushing down. Like I even think about this from my daughter's perspective. You're so beautiful. You're so beautiful. You're so beautiful. Maybe I shouldn't be pitching this idea that their identity is tied in being beautiful. Maybe there's some drawback to that. Maybe it's better that I go, hey, I love the way that you didn't give up. I love the way that you drive through and do difficult things. I love the way that you're dedicated and you're disciplined to do what is right. Maybe those are the things that we should be steering their identities into, not necessarily these elusive, winning, to your point, looking good, you know what I mean? Or these intrinsic or really extrinsic values that they could maybe lose someday. And we see this, we've used this analogy with guys leaving the military and going to civilian life. They lose their mission. Why? Because their identity was a warrior. And now it's been taken from them. And I don't know, it's an interesting thought process. And it really makes me nervous about what I'm saying to my kids on a regular basis, thinking, geez, is that really what I should be promoting?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. The only other thing I would add to is that you do want to be honest with your kids. Like, I don't lie to my kids.
Like falsely. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, for example, if Brecken didn't perform very well at his meet and he's like, hey, Dad, what did you think? I wouldn't lie to him about it.
Yeah. Well, he knows too, right? Like, what's the damage of that? When you're like, oh, I love that you did so hard. Right. And he goes, I didn't push hard.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm always honest. I would say to him straight up, hey man, like you didn't have it today. Like it seemed like you were distracted, or it seemed like you didn't have the fire, or I'm not to beat him up, but to like figure it out. So like, what was up? Oh man, I had a bad couple of days, or I didn't sleep very well last night. Oh, well, it showed. So what do we need to do next time? We need to get better sleep. Right. So how can we set that up? Right. So it's always leading to a productive outcome, but yeah, don't lie to your kids. Like you said, they know, everybody knows, and it just sets them up for failure.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, brother. I think we're good with questions today. We'll save some for next week. You want to take us home?
Yep. Sounds good. So connect with us on Facebook. That's where we fielded our questions today. Facebook.com/group/orderman. IC opens up in a little over 15 days.
Yeah. About 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah. So be prepared. Get ready. If you're on the fence, you need to act quickly. Those spots fill up fairly quick, and we'll have it open for a limited time. And then as a reminder, Ryan's going to be giving away a book, autographed book by Mr. Cam Haynes. And really, what was it? Leave a rating and review, iTunes, and then email Brandy,
BRANDY at orderofman.com, and you'll be entered in for the giveaway signed copy of Endure by Cameron Haynes.
Yeah. And we'll announce that on Friday. So act quickly over the next couple of days.
Right. Yes, sir. All right. Thank you, Kip. Guys, thank you. Great questions today. Really enjoyed that one. Keep the questions coming. We'll do our best to answer them, and we'll be back on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.